Just a few weeks ago, we were talking about a path for the Panthers to play in the Orange Bowl, and now they have accepted an invitation to the Quick Lane Bowl against Eastern Michigan. We look at what went wrong for the Panthers this season, how they struggled to finish strong, and we look at the successes of this year's football team and how they can build on that for the future. That and more on this week's Hail to Pitt podcast.
What was your message about finishing it in these final 30 minutes?
Well, it happened in West Virginia where we knocked off number 2. It happened in South Carolina, and it's happening in Pittsburgh today.
Our guys had a lot of guts tonight. We're just going to keep getting better. I mean, that's what it is.
One hell of a game that you will never, ever forget. We shocked the world.
Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt. This is the week of December 14th, and this is the Hail to Pitt podcast. I'm Alan.
I'm Vince.
And I'm Pam.
Detroit in December. Shouldn't be that bad, should it? Pitt found out it's playing Eastern Michigan in the Quick Lane Bowl, and that's what is next. But this week, we look back and we evaluate a season in review. Some would say, get down to brass taxes, Vince, and cut all the BS and really assess things now as we get ready for the holidays. Pitt football is winding down, and we got a lot to talk about at H2P Show on Twitter and Instagram. And you put it here in the rundown, Vince. Today, brass taxes.
Yeah, we gotta put our emotion aside that we've had the past couple weeks and really break down how this team performed over this season. Before we get to this big bowl game coming up day after Christmas, and we also have National Signing Day for the early period next week, December 18th, that we'll be talking about. But before we get to all that, we gotta really talk about how this team did.
Yes, we do, and we're going to do that today, and we're going to really be honest, Pam. I think honesty today is the best policy.
Oh, yeah, it always is the best policy, and this Pitt team needs to be honest and look themselves in the mirror and see how they could have finished a little bit better here down the stretch.
And make that change. Look in the mirror. That's what everybody needs to be doing. Well, actually, right now they need to be practicing getting in the reps, especially the underclassmen, utilizing the time that they've been afforded because they are bowling. That's what's important now. But yeah, we get to look in the mirror as Pitt fans, and a lot of interesting conversation on the internet as well among Pitt fans we're going to get into. It's going to be a fun show today. At H2P Show, as I said, on Twitter and Instagram. You can email us, Pam. We got the email wide open for everybody, huh?
Yep, at Hail to Pitt podcast, the number 2 at gmail.com.
So holler there if you'd like to send a formal email, and we'll read it and maybe even read it on the air if you want us to. And we appreciate any feedback on Panther Lair or Reddit, or I got feedback walking through the Cork Factory this week, Vince, and someone said, hey, when are yins getting a voicemail for me to call into? So we might have to set that up soon.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from all the listeners by any means necessary.
Absolutely. So we might set that up. So look forward to a voicemail for you to call into, and you can maybe have your voice heard on the show, and you could hail to Pitt for us. We are brought to you by Pretty Easy Podcasts. Go to prettyeasypodcasts.com. If you would like to start a podcast like this show today, it's very simple to sign up, or you could just inquire right there on the sign up page on prettyeasypodcast.com. And basically what you get is your own personal producer who helps take the load off your shoulders so you could focus on just talking into a microphone like we do every single week here on the Hail to Pitt podcast. And if you want to do a show on any topic whatsoever, Pretty Easy Podcast is just all about making it easy on podcasters. So go to prettyeasypodcast.com to inquire and get started today. The big news among some crushing defeats and basketball season hitting a mini break here. The big news is the Quick Lane Bowl. Pam, the day after Christmas, We're going to go into that game in long form on a future episode, but your initial thoughts when you saw this past weekend that Pitt is bowling in Detroit, Michigan.
My first thought is this is the same exact place that Pitt last won a bowl game at, the Little Caesars Bowl led by Chad Voitic, correct?
Yeah,
Yes, yes, and that was a much
That
cooler,
was what I thought of.
much cooler name back then. I'll give me Little Caesars Bowl over Quick Lane Bowl any day.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one, but in addition to this was the last time Pitt won, the last time they won a bowl game. I also thought how big they've fallen to be playing against Eastern Michigan. Even 2 weeks ago, we were talking about them playing Texas or Michigan, teams along those lines in that caliber.
Yeah, wishful thinking. When I saw this, it was a total face to palm. This is no fun. I know we're going to go into a long form, Vince, but there's really not a lot to win here except just a game. It's a tough situation to be in. You're set up for a team that's going to be super hungry, basically playing a home game that you absolutely should not lose to.
Yeah, well, you talk about nothing to gain. I'll say this: what is to gain is not ending the season on a loss. And with how bad this team's looked over the past couple weeks, any win will make you feel just a little bit better going into the off season, and a loss would just be a downright disaster. So there's an opportunity here to finish with a win. And at the end of the day, I don't think, and we'll get into it, I don't think anybody's going to care who the opponent was. It's just a matter that they won.
Yeah, we talked about this last week, right? How bad Pat Narduzzi needs this bowl victory more than anything. So that's what is important. Me as a fan, all I hope for, I honestly don't even care if they win. I just want to see an offensive performance with 0 penalties. That's all I'm asking for, Pam, which we might have to dive into a little bit here as we get into our season review portion. But the Quick Lane Bowl, the day after Christmas against Eastern Michigan, up at Ford Field. You going? Are you two going to this?
No, I have to work the next day. Some people have to work the week between Christmas and New Year, so we will not be attending this one.
It is close enough that if someone wants to take a day trip, I might go. We'll see. It depends on.
You get back at like 4 a.m.
Yeah, it's not bad.
That's not that bad.
Classes are out till January 6th, Pam. So we got a lot. We don't need to sleep.
Maybe the two of you can go.
Maybe we might be going after all.
We'll see. I got a lot of family coming in town. I'll see what they want to do. But of course, we encourage all Pitt fans, if you can make it, to go. But that's a conversation we just had. A lot of Pitt fans need to have about maybe making that trip because it will be heavy Eastern Michigan presence. I don't know how much that'll help that team against this defense of the Pitt Panthers, but you don't want to have a disadvantage at all in a bowl game if you can avoid it. So go to this game if you can make it. But day after Christmas, kind of rough. Not really the best setup for anybody. Yikes! At least it's not the New Mexico Bowl. Are you ready to review the season though and take a close, long look at everything that went into all those regular season games, Pam?
Yeah, let's unpack this here.
All right, let's start this off, and good prompt here. You got to be very straight and direct with the prompt on a rundown sheet here, Vince, and we've done that today, and we've even put it in bold. Everyone give an answer to the questions we're going to ask, and that includes us three and all you Pitt Panther fans out there at H2P Show if you want to answer these questions with us. And the first one is, what is your overall feeling about this season, and did the Pitt football team meet your expectations? You want to go first, Pam?
Yeah, I'll take this one. I was disappointed, but mostly because of how big their highs were and how well they looked at certain points. But they were, even from my preseason expectations, I think I said 8-4,
Mm-hmm.
and some losses there, but they beat UCF, which I did not think they would lose, or which I did think they'd lose to. I was unsure about North Carolina, where I thought they would win was Tech and Boston College, and that didn't happen as well, and maybe even Miami. So they were a little bit below my preseason expectations, and then as the season went on, I had higher expectations for this team, and then it all came crashing down.
Yeah, there was a lot of crashing at the end, that's for sure. I mean, you and I both picked 8-4, I believe, at the beginning of the year, but honestly, the record is kind of what was expected. I think, at least for me, Pam, I don't want to speak for you, but I did give them an extra win, thinking a little bit more positively going into the season. But honestly, a 7-win season is kind of right in that range anyway. And overall, my feeling about that was it obviously could have been a lot better, but I will say as a fan, it was an enjoyable season because the defense was spectacular and we had some really amazing moments during the season. I think we got some glimpses at what the Pitt football program can be, but we were reminded how inconsistent it is at the same time. So a lot of what we talked about preseason, Vince, happened this season, which unfortunately isn't a great thing. But then there were some shockers. Like, I did not expect that defense to be as spectacular as it was all season long.
Yeah, they certainly rose to the occasion. There's no doubt about that, and we'll be talking about them in a little bit more detail. For me, yeah, they kind of met my expectations in that, I think they were, about as good as what I thought they were going to be. But at the same time, the feeling I have about the season is not good because of the way it ended and how much better it could have been. You think it was just little things, drop passes, fumbles, penalties, that's those maybe some bad coaching decisions, deciding to kick field goals instead of going for touchdowns, like little things like that, if they would have done, they could have added another win or two.
Yeah, there were some W's left on the board for sure. That's probably the most crushing thing about this season was that it almost was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. A lot of people are going to say, well, Pitt did as I expected, as we all kind of just did. But then again, you think, well, throughout the season, my expectations were rising, especially a few weeks ago, Pam. As you mentioned, we were talking Orange Bowl.
Yeah, and I think it is fair to say, though, what was the Vegas over-under for this team? 5.5?
5.5, 6.
So, yeah, 5.5, 6, somewhere in that range. And so the expectations were middle of the road, but like we all said, the way they played at moments is what made people have higher expectations, especially after that Virginia game.
Yeah. And then UCF victory. I mean, there were some very positive moments, and let's get into that. What was the highlight of the season then for you, Vince?
That's a tough one. I'm going to say it was beating North Carolina. That was something that they had to go out there and prove that they could do. So if I think about, one individual moment and the defense getting a big stop against a team that has constantly just killed us, that was the highlight for me.
For me, it was UCF and the Pitt special play. Yeah, that was electric, and that was awesome. A team that came in with super high expectations in UCF, and that one play encapsulated the game. They went for it with a trick play. They knew they were going to score. They weren't scared of them, and they were against other teams throughout the year, coaching staff. So I think that one play was my highlight of the year.
Yeah, I have to say, anytime you have a moment that results in T-shirts getting made, that's going to be up there in terms of highlights of the year. Was there another moment a T-shirt was made for this season at all? I'm trying to think. They should have made a shirt with how brutal the Syracuse quarterbacks were were treated by the Pitt defensive line. Maybe that would have resulted in a t-shirt, but I'm with you. Beating UCF, highlight of the season, at least for me. Being at that game was also extra special. But yeah, there were other wins that I thought were maybe, UNC, I think you could say, was kind of monumental, at least for this program. For most teams, beating UNC is not that special, but for Pitt, it was definitely a monkey off the back. Beating Syracuse in that game was also pretty cool, I thought, but nothing tops what Pitt did against an undefeated UCF team, and all the hopes and expectations that were added on to the team after that victory in particular. That was a pivotal moment that seems like almost a year ago now, Vince, because we're kind of back to the same place we were before that game at this moment.
Yeah. The team was rising up, and now it seems like they're back down again.
Yeah, it's a bummer in that regard. But then, there were still special things we look back on this season that give you hope for next season, and also things that exceeded our expectations and did it the entire season. And I think there are definitely spots with the Pitt football team in that vein. Pam, do you have any one person in particular who exceeded your expectations and maybe maintained it throughout?
I'm going to give the obvious answer here, Twineman.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be a first-round pick.
Unanimous all ACC, too. One of only 6 unanimous all SEC players this season.
Yeah, he exceeded expectations from the get-go, and he sustained it all year long. And we talked about repeatedly when this team needed to stop, he was in it. And that defensive line overall exceeded my expectations. In years past, we've talked about how that's been a weak part. They haven't been able to get enough pressure, and that was the complete opposite this year. So that defensive line, anchored by Twineman, is my person who exceeded expectations.
Yeah, I mean, that was amazing too, especially considering the injuries on the defensive line. Seeing people step up that way, Twyman for sure. I mean, the MVP of the team. I don't know if you could really argue against that, but I want to say the person who exceeded my expectations maybe wasn't him, because I expected Twyman to be pretty good, especially with them showing him working out with Aaron Donald a lot early in the season. But Kylan Johnson, to me, coming in as a transfer, I think he made everything a lot easier for that defensive line. And maybe without him, they wouldn't have been able to, take those wounds they took with the 2 injuries early in the season, Vince. So he's the guy I think exceeded expectations just because of how crucial he was in terms of helping get after the quarterback and being involved in almost every single play. Guy had a lot of tackles and was definitely a guy who stepped up as a leader.
Yeah, and you kind of stole my answer a little bit. I was actually going to give the answer of the whole linebacker group as a unit. And the reason I say that is because it has been so long, it seems like, since the linebackers were not a liability on this defense. And between Kylan Johnson and Campbell and Cam Bright, and you could just go down the line with guys that they had there, tons of speed, getting all over the field. They just didn't. They were not really the cause of a lot of negative plays, I will say, and that's with a lot of new starters and new pieces and young guys in there. I think that was a group that played far above, I thought, at least what I expected coming into the season.
Yeah, you had Kylan Johnson and Phil Campbell combined both for over 10 sacks as linebackers. Pretty solid there. And then you add on what the defensive line did. I mean, between Jones, Alexander, and Twyman, this was a very, very special season for that group, for both those groups. And, I mean, all season long, it basically was steady. It was one of the only consistent parts about the Pitt football team. And there's a lot of improvement that needs to be made, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Some players will be lost on the defensive side of the ball. But I will say overall, for next season, there's, I think, a lot more positivity and a lot more hope. And I think the expectations will be higher going into next season than they were this season because of the youth on defense, and still a lot of great players coming back. And the fact that just Narduzzi, I think, is in his element now. Like, his juice is flowing, Pam. This guy has been waiting to get his defense just right, and I think this season he got it the way he likes it. And I think he's in his element. Offensively, a totally different story, but as a defensive-minded coach, he's going to be bringing in consistent defenses, I think, moving forward each and every single year because he's hitting his stride.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what we've been waiting for since Pitt hired him, was a defense that he could rely on and he could coach up, and he finally had his players in.
For sure, for sure. What about the prospects of next season then? What do you have the most hope for next year, Pam?
I think continuing to build on the defense. I know that's an obvious answer again, but I think that defensive line with Rashad Weaver and Keyshawn Camp coming back, that defensive line is going to be unstoppable with those guys on that line, and they're going to have more depth with them coming back. It's going to be a unit to watch.
Oh yeah, and shout out to Keyshawn Camp rehabbing. I saw him at a few Pitt theater productions this year, Vince. He's been taking in some arts while he's been rehabbing the injuries. Very well-rounded individual and going to be special on the D-line.
A great thespian, that guy. Just a terror on the D-line. You know, that first game against Virginia when he was in there, he was all over the field. And you guys said it, you know, you bring that defensive line back that they had, plus Weaver, plus Camp. That's a very stout unit that goes, you know, 8 guys and maybe even more, maybe even 10 guys deep there. That's exactly what you want to see.
Absolutely. And you have anything to add in terms of positivity there, Vince, and next season, something you're hopeful for?
You know, we've been talking about positivity here, and we have not mentioned the offense yet. And so,
there's a reason there, buddy.
Well, I'm going to mention them out here, and I might be going a little off the wall here, Pam, and you could tell me if I'm wrong on this.
Oh, I will.
Is that, you know, this offense a lot of the times was not good. No other way around that. But I will say this, you know, I thought, you know, if you look at Kenny Pickett's play, you look at some of the offensive line play, you look at some of the play calling in a lot of situations, I think it was actually pretty good. And I think it's a lot of stuff with either, you know, dropped passes or wrong routes run or fumbles, that kind of stuff, you know, really derailed a lot of drives for us. And there were a lot of situations where the Panthers probably could have held on to the ball a little bit more, taken more time off the clock, maybe gotten a few more points. And I think it's execution, you know, that I think it will get better. I think it has to get better.
But it didn't all year, though. If it's just execution, that's something that should get better as the year goes on.
We went from Sean Watson as an offensive coordinator and Kenny Pickett not looking great at all last year. And then this year, we got Mark Whipple in here, who I think, Alan, you've called it out on this program many times, who's had some really good playing design. He's gotten receivers open. It's, you know, sometimes it's just guys not catching the ball, or maybe there was a misread, or you know, they caught the ball and then they fumbled it. You know, I think that, you know, I feel a lot better about this offense going into the next season than I did last year going into this season.
Yeah, I think you have to, just because of the experience and the growing pains we're hoping. I will say that throwing the ball 430 times in a season and only throwing 9 picks is kind of, you said it, Vince, it's a step forward for Kenny Pickett. That's a pretty good rate. He only threw 10 touchdowns, but the mistakes on his part, you know, they happen, but I'd say a fewer and farther between than the previous season. And he's now grizzled in terms of being a college quarterback. And, you know, you just need playmakers to step up. Pitt had a lot of players drop passes this season. And you also have an offensive coordinator who maybe is going to better understand the tools he has. So that's something to think positively about. when it comes to the offense. But still, if we're talking positivity going into next season, the defense will dominate all the preseason talk for the Pitt Panthers because the offense just has to prove it at some point. And the thing that's a bummer is this bowl game, Pam, isn't really going to give them an opportunity to do anything except go out there and play some good, crisp football. But even if you dominate Eastern Michigan, everybody's going to still be questioning the Pitt offense until next season begins.
Yeah, the best thing the bowl game does is it gives them 15 practices as a team this offseason to work on things going into next year.
Okay, let's go into some of the negativity and let's get real here and talk. First, what was the lowest moment of the season, Pam, for you?
For me, it was that Miami game. First of all, sitting in the rain, and it was just miserable watching that offense try to perform. And that is when Pitt really had super high expectations, was that game. So I think that's kind of when things start to turn. And I just thought the offense against a bad Miami, especially front line, was really poor. I mean, Miami does have the talent, but they were not playing like they had the talent. They lost to some bad teams as well, Miami, throughout the year. So the low moment to me was the offense's performance in that Miami game.
Yeah, you point out the offensive performance in that game, and I'm just putting it on the low moment was just that last drive, because even though the offense caused all that, the defense, a backup quarterback just going down the field and beating them that way, so demoralizing. Like you said, all the hopes we had at that point of the season, it really felt like Pitt could be a little bit above average this season, and it kind of all came crashing down in that moment in the rain. That was heartbreaking, and for me, the low moment of the season. I'm just glad I wasn't in the stadium, Vince. That would have been even rougher.
It was hard to watch. Maybe I'm just numb to it, but it was still very hard to watch. No doubt about that. For me, the low moment was at Penn State kicking a field goal in the fourth quarter on 4th and goal. I still, you're going up against, you're on the road up against your biggest rival, biggest game of the year, a top 10 opponent, and you don't even give yourself a chance to win. If they would have lost that game, by going for it on 4th down, not getting it, and then Penn State makes a little bit of a drive and you just don't get back down there for a chance to score, I can live with that. But, the fact that you didn't give yourself a chance there, I mean, that's just, it's heartbreaking to see that.
And now with the benefit of hindsight, we see that they had the Pitt special play in their back pocket and didn't even use it in that moment.
Yeah, that's I didn't even think about that, but maybe it makes it a little bit worse.
I mean, we can all agree I would have rather seen the Pitt special used in that instance than the UCF game, right, Pam?
Oh yeah, we ask anyone. They much. I'm so upset I can't even speak. They would have rather seen Pitt beat Penn State than UCF.
All right, well, let's continue to be negative Nancy's here and ask the next question, and that is, what element of the team let us down the most, Vince?
For me, it's the pass catchers, the skill players, the tight end group, the receiver group. These guys dropped the ball way too much.
Literally,
he did not convert big third downs whenever they had to. Just threw the offense off the rails way too many times. To me, that was the biggest letdown. At the beginning of the season, I didn't think these groups would be this disappointing. I thought there was some really good athletes in these groups, but at the end of the day, you got to catch the ball before you could do something with it.
For me, the element of the team that let me down the most was actually Narduzzi and the coaching.
Oh my goodness!
I also felt the wide receivers and the pass catchers there, but this is my issue. It's not necessarily the coaching. I don't think Narduzzi needs to be fired. I did say a lot of choice words after that Penn State game, but there were a number of instances this year where this coaching staff and Narduzzi, probably the head of that coaching staff, played super conservative. Narduzzi prides himself on being this tough guy. I'm from Youngstown, and we're going to be a tough team. Well, be tough and take chances. Look at that UCF game when they were tough and they went for it. They won. It paid off. So some of these decisions to be super conservative and then you're trying to justify it after the fact, it still makes no sense. So that's what let me down personally, because going into this year, I thought the world of this coaching staff. And I still think there's elements there, but this just, there was a number of times, it just wasn't once this year.
Yeah, this was definitely a season where Narduzzi was just out there singing every week, I am who I am, and doing it his way every single week. And I don't know, to a fault, yeah, but that was like expected, so it didn't really let me down as a fan.
See, I didn't expect it though. That was my problem.
We do have, I would say we have one of the hardest headed coaches in all of college football. Just a guy who has a philosophy he sticks to. And you sometimes you got to respect it, I guess, even though, it might end up one day costing him his job, as a lot of people try to talk about on Twitter. Or not a lot, I'd say a vocal minority. But didn't let me down the most as much as just an offensive line that features an all-ACC player and another, second-team all-CC player in Bryce Hargrove, Vince, or at least second or third. I mean, two guys on this unit that were recognized at the end of the season, but as a unit, there was really no progression at all in terms of the run game and strength and conditioning and pushing people around. I mean, that was just sporadic. And then the mistakes that this unit made on a consistent basis killed this team throughout the season. And this is where football games are won, as cliche as it sounds. And this is where Pitt, on a consistent basis, just couldn't rely on what they had in front of Kenny Pickett and the running backs. And so that's what I think let us down, was just the offensive line progressing and getting better into the end of the season. You expected maybe growing pains because they were so young, but it just never kind of clicked. And that unit, I mean, this is just probably the most important part of the team in terms of all the extra practices. Right now, that's what needs to be a huge focus for the coaching staff, is that offensive line, to me at least. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does. I'd say, up until the last couple of weeks, I thought that the pass protection was actually pretty decent, adequate enough for sure. But, all year, the run blocking was just not there. We could argue maybe there was just no commitment to the running game, or maybe the formations they were running out of were a little bizarre, but the holes weren't opening up as much as they should. And of course, the penalties, false starts, illegal shifts, that stuff was just, it just plagued this team every week.
Yeah, absolutely. It was terrible to watch. I will say again that I'm convinced Pitt leads the nation in most illegal shifts.
Yeah, we gotta look that one up. The advanced stats there. And also, I mean, illegal shifts were a lot of, tight ends and receivers causing those. But still, the offensive line, I mean, you talk about games where there were games where, Gabe Hoy would be false starting nonstop, or Nolan Ulizio just like nonstop inside their heads somehow, inside their own heads, just couldn't get out of their own way. Just frustrating as a fan to watch. And that's where it brings me to the next question. And for me, it's discipline. What needs improved most for Pitt football to get better? The damn discipline.
You took it from me.
I mean, Pam, we're near all of our questions asked here so far, and you and I have pretty much been on the same exact answer almost every way through.
Absolutely. And it's just not only discipline for the penalties, but Vince talked about how so many passes were dropped, balls were fumbled this year. Even sometimes it happened more in the beginning of the year, stupid penalties by the defensive backs at times, but that cleaned itself up. And it goes back to discipline, whether it's making sure you're set before the ball is snapped, or holding onto the ball, or watching the ball all the way through. So I agree with you. It's the mental side of the game. They would have won one or two more games if they were mentally tough and mentally ready.
Yeah, I'm kind of going to say the same answer as you, but I'm going with execution. And I've talked about catching the ball here and holding on to the ball, enough here, but execute as in, be focused and just don't commit any stupid penalties.
They need a mental toughness coach
on offense. Don't false start. Just do good execution. Don't miss any blocks. Things like that. I think if the execution was a little bit better, I think that this team would have a few more wins here. I don't think this team was good enough to have a much better season. It just didn't materialize.
Yeah, that takes us to this last portion of our review questions we're asking. And you said they need, what was that, a mental toughness coach, Pam? So is that what one of the coaching changes that should be made?
Yeah, they do. Honestly, they need a coach or bring in someone from the psychology department to get these players focused. Maybe it's changing up the routine or the night before or something. They do need some kind of change to focus on the mental side of the game more. And I do think they should bring in someone. I don't know exactly what, but Heather Lyke has dedicated resources to mental wellness in athletics in a little different capacity, but let's expand it here and work on the mental side of the game for some of these players. In addition to that, I do think they should keep Whipple for some consistency purposes, but maybe it is a coaching change on the offensive line. I'm not familiar with who that coach is, but that's something that we haven't seen develop.
Coach Borbley on the offensive line, like you said, Alan, he's had a lot of new guys to work with, and it's hard to throw him out of the way. I mean, how much blame do you really put on a coach for false starts and
No, but you talked about
like
the
that.
lack of development, and Alan's talked about the lack of strength on that line too.
Yeah, when you're playing that many young guys and you're bringing in a graduate transfer to play right tackle and that kind of side. I mean, it's not like he was working. This is not the offensive line of a few years ago. I think this guy should be given some. I wouldn't make any major coaching changes.
No, me neither. But if you had to,
because I don't. I think all these coaches they have are valuable in their own ways or deserve some more time to make things happen.
Yeah, zero coaching changes or personnel changes for me in terms of getting rid of anything. Consistency is what is so important for this offense at this point, at this juncture, with all the starts and stops with coordinators and systems. You need something to carry over. I don't care if you were upset with the offense this year. We all were, but you need to give them this offseason and time to develop, and maybe we'll reconvene at that question at a later date. But no changes in that. This is the only thing I want to see in terms of changes. Nothing taken away. In addition, maybe a mental health, wellness coach or mental toughness coach, Pam. I like that idea. But I want a communications specialist or a play calling coordinator, someone who gets the play in quicker to this offensive unit, and someone who's going to make sure everybody's on the same page, because I have to still believe that all of the mess ups on offense have to in some way connect to the weird system Pitt used in terms of play calling and getting plays onto the field. That just looked wrong to me all season long.
Yeah, we'll have to see if they keep that in place next year. And if they do, I know on that episode, after the first game, you're going to lose it.
My head will explode, and I'm going to go buy walkie-talkies for these coaches and I'll get Kenny Pickett's helmet and put a mic or a speaker in it myself. I don't know what's going on there. Should be able to just call the play in. This is the 21st century. Jeez, oh man. All right, but that's the season in review, and those are all the questions we had asking about the season. Frustrating, but also had its high spots, and now we have a bowl game to get ready for, and we'll be breaking that down, of course, long form in the coming weeks, day after Christmas game. Any closing comments on the season in review, Vince?
It was a good discussion. but it brings up a lot of frustration of what could have been.
Absolutely. All right, let's run through some quick non-football sports before we get to the rest of this, the finish of this show here. Pam, Pitt men's hoops losing to Louisville, and, they were kind of making it a basketball game for a little bit until, the number one team in the nation pulled away and dominated the Panthers.
Yeah, it was a close game. We watched it here, and Louisville lost to Texas Tech this week, so they will no longer be the number one team, and that seems to be how it's going in college basketball this year. The number one team continues to go down, but there were some things you'd like to see. You could just tell in this game that Pitt was just outmatched, and Louisville just had better players. But it's good to see them fight against Louisville, a team they beat last year.
Yeah. I mean, they were ranked number one for a reason.
Yep.
There's no doubt about that. And you saw some frustration, too many turnovers, things of that nature in this game that are going to come out against a really good team like this. And I've been watching around the ACC, and I'll tell you right now, we'll be talking about this in the coming weeks as the conference season heats up. Which is on January 4th, Alan, against Wake Forest.
Huge.
And we're going to have, after this finals exams break, we'll have Northern Illinois on the 16th when the Panthers get back in action, followed by Binghamton and Canisius. Interesting college.
Yes, some cupcakes until that Wake Forest game.
But watching the ACC, outside of Louisville and Duke, in North Carolina and Virginia, to me, this conference seems a bit wide open.
Well, Virginia still can't score.
And
they beat North Carolina like 55-44 the other night.
Yeah, I mean, they do have some injuries. They're a little banged up at the moment. But outside of those teams, you don't see a tremendous amount of really deep, talented teams in the ACC, at least from what I'm seeing. NC State, I think, has looked all right to me. So I think that there's a chance that the Panthers can get more wins in the ACC than they had last year, and that would be a nice improvement.
I absolutely think that's possible, and seeing how I think they're already progressing, and I'm still holding out hope to be a bubble team. We'll see. I'm at least fingers crossed. NIT's kind of what we talked about preseason, but so far I like the trajectory Pitt men's basketball's on, and yes, they will be back in action on the 16th. Finals week is winding down here. Actually, that's why I'll be celebrating after we record. This is the last show of the semester that I'm doing here, Pam, and I'm going to have myself a nice little whiskey after we're done recording here to celebrate. It's a great day to be a Pitt Panther student with finals winding down. But unfortunately, there was it's good that not everybody was on campus at their usual times. It's not, finals, that it's a different kind of hustle and bustle. It's a lot of focus, not a lot of chatter. So there wasn't a lot of talk about volleyball as there has been all semester, but maybe that's a good thing because super disappointing. Out of nowhere, losing to Cincinnati. Didn't see that coming second round, and it was an amazing season, but oh my goodness, what could have been, Pam?
Yeah, it was a tough one. A Cincinnati team that they played previously in the year and had beaten, but they were in a tough bracket, and it was very disappointing, a team that had Final Four aspirations. But hopefully, just like in the NCAA tournament, basketball tournament, those one and done games are really, really tough. If you're not up to par, or if you're facing a really good team, anything can happen. So hopefully they can build upon this and take it into next year and come back even stronger.
Yeah, losing into that final set, the girls just looked stunned, and so were all the supporters. Just an awful way to end the season, but at the same time, it was a great season. So congratulations to the Panthers on a tremendous season, and I'm sure they'll bounce back next year.
Yeah, and the cool thing is the fact that Pitt is becoming known for multiple sports in terms of being powerhouse across the country. Volleyball have arrived as a volleyball destination. Wrestling is looking awesome right now. And with the, everybody loves what Jeff Capel's doing. If Pitt can get to some kind of consistency and respectability back in men's hoops, we like what Coach White's doing with the women we're going to talk about here in a second, Pam. And, of course, football always feels like they're on the edge. Pitt is really, overall the job of Heather Lyke, I think, is really what you look at when you talk about these other sports that are coming up and really putting Pitt on the map across the nation with volleyball and wrestling and the work they're doing in terms of trying to rebuild stuff that Pitt has always been known for. It's an interesting time for the athletic department.
Yeah, and speaking of Heather, like something we didn't mention earlier was Eastern Michigan, who Pitt's playing in the bowl game, is where Heather Lyke used to be the athletic director at.
A lot of fun, a lot of interesting connections. Is Charlie Batch going to be at that game? That's his alma mater, right, Vince?
Yeah, I don't know if he'll be there, but I'm sure he'll be watching.
A lot of Pittsburgh flavor connections with that big bowl game in a couple of weeks. Women's hoops, last thing to get into here. They lost to Stony Brook at home by 3, Pam. They're on break, and they're going to get Miami of Ohio and Cincinnati before their conference play begins, but a rough one to take in at the Pete the other day.
Yeah, and Stony Brook was up pretty much this entire game, and we've talked about it. This team's a young team. There are some bright spots, some players doing well, but it's going to take some time, and it's there. You're going to have some bad losses, and you're going to probably take a beating in the ACC. But just like with ACC and the men's side, you have a few teams, but the rest of the teams are middle of the pack there in the ACC. So some of the games where you might get destroyed in previous years and have been, maybe they'll be a little bit closer, but you just like to see this team continue to fight. You're going to have bad losses, and you just want to be playing your best basketball as the season goes on. So if they can start to improve here, that's what you're looking for out of this team.
All right, there it is. That's all your Pitt athletics and what's going on currently. Now, as we get closer to our big finish of the show, we need to talk about what you're talking about. And before we go around town in Pittsburgh, let's go out into the Pitternet. Vince, if you would like to hear what people are saying online about the Pitt Panthers, I am ready to get down on that, man.
Well, let's do it.
Can you explain what internet is?
I hear there's rumors on the internets.
And to all those faceless keyboard warriors on Twitter.
But we're a good darn football team. I'm proud of these guys.
Online Pitt chatter, always so fun to get heated on Reddit, Twitter, Panther Lair. And apparently there are voices on Panther Lair, Vince, calling for Bill Churpak to be the head coach of the Pitt Panthers.
Yeah, I saw this in several places on Panther Lair over the past week. Congratulations to the Thomas Jefferson Jaguars capturing another state championship, PIAA state champion, class 4A. They beat Dallas High School, I believe it was. We're always cheering for the Jaguars on this show, and Bill Churpak doing an excellent job there. And a lot of people think on Panther Lair feel like he should be the head coach.
Can I just address who are these people that you've been telling me on Panther Lair for the last 15 years are always calling for high school coaches in the Whippeal to be the coach at Pitt? What Power 5 university hires a high school coach to be their head man in charge? When does that ever happen? Why do people consistently bring this up?
It don't happen very often. Maybe he should be the offensive line coach. Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
How many good offensive line
communications coordinator. That's what you go for someone like that. But congratulations to TJ. All right, let's go to level 1 here. This one's from it looks like Dayton Vukovich, 21. This looks like Reddit here. Pam saying, being a fan of Pitt sports is like getting the same bad meal from your favorite restaurant, but you keep going back expecting the meal to get better. Just keep hailing, I guess.
Yeah, I saw this on Reddit. I thought it was an appropriate analogy for the football team this year. You just kept thinking it's going to get better. In the past few years, it hasn't. So
if your favorite restaurant keeps giving you bad food, are they really your favorite restaurant?
Well, if your favorite football team keeps giving you bad...
What restaurants do you like that keep giving you bad
I
food?
don't. I think it is a little bit of an odd analogy.
The food sucks, but I love the place. I don't know.
I don't know. I thought it was maybe that's... I don't know. I thought it was different.
I'd like just keep hailing. Keep hailing, baby. I like that. That needs to be on a t-shirt for sure. How about this on Reddit? The mods of our Pitt Panthers have put a new rule out through the bowl game. No more posts regarding why Narduzzi should be fired or nobody should be mad at him. Basically, they've put a kibosh on talking about Narduzzi's job status, which is interesting. But then user JBish21 said, the attendance problem is partly because of the old Pitt gonna Pitt adage. Who the hell wants to go to a home game against Boston College after Thanksgiving in the cold after getting waffle stomped by Virginia Tech? So now people aren't going to talk about Narduzzi, but they're going to refer to the lack of attendance due to waffle stomps, Vince.
I don't even know what that means.
I'm a fan of waffle stomping. Keep on hailing and waffle stomping. If anything, Pitt Panther fans are killing it with the verbiage and the interesting euphemisms here online. That's what we got going for us.
Well, the only thing that's going to increase attendance and general interest is Pitt's got to go out there and start waffle stomping some of their opponents, and it's going to start December 26th, hopefully, against Eastern Michigan.
And there we have all of our Pitternet chatter. Thanks to everybody who interacts online with us at H2P Show or just with each other. Keep on hailing online. Now let's take it to the real world, Vince, where it's a little bit, it's less heated because why get mad about Pitt football when Pitt's gonna Pitt, as some people say, but they're still talking about this bowl game. It had a lot of people reacting in different ways around town.
Yeah, a lot of talk about this bowl game and the timing of it and just location and all that.
Another Saturday coming and the Panthers are playing. Time to find out what the answers are saying.
So Ian's going up there to Detroit for the bowl game.
You kidding me? That whole place up there is like going down Carnegie on a Friday night.
Get out of town.
Yeah, that's why their whole police force got all them RoboCops in it.
Yeah, I guess I ain't going either. I got to throw my tree out that day anyway.
Hell Pitt.
What the answers are saying.
So that's what the Insers are saying. We'll be talking about this big Pitt bowl game in the coming weeks, as well as a big signing, college signing day episode coming up as well for the early signing period.
Ooh, the recruitniks are coming out. I can't wait.
They will be, and there's going to be a lot of that all over the country, as well as some college football bowl games starting. We still got one last game, but we also got the Final Four, the playoffs is set. Alan, we gotta discuss that a little bit.
Oh, college football! You're giving us one of the I'm gonna say the best since the playoffs began. The best four and best two matchups, best four teams, most exciting prospects and exciting matchups. I think with these four teams, absolutely hit the nail on the head from the committee. I think. I know a lot of people maybe are sour on OU, but you're talking about Jalen Hurts, who has LSU's number throughout his career. That's something to look forward to. And then you've got Ohio State and Clemson is basically a dream matchup, and as only a semifinal game. This is unreal to me.
Yeah, I'm mostly in agreement with you that still Oklahoma. I think based on their record and what they accomplished, they are probably the number 4 team.
Who better for that spot? I mean, honestly, come on. There's no one out there that would have been better suited.
It's interesting. You know, the thing, if Georgia didn't get blasted in that game against LSU, I would have made a strong argument that they should have been the number 4 team.
Paper champions all season long. I've never seen a team get so exposed like the Georgia Bulldogs did this year.
Well, and the other thing I think that is a little disheartening is that if Oregon in their first week did not play Auburn and they just played, you know, some regular old non-conference game, or if they would have held on to the lead for the last 4 seconds of the game, they would be playing in the playoff right now. I think, you know, after watching this, you could make an argument that maybe Oregon was the number 4 team. You know, I know they don't deserve to be in it because of the record, but, you know, and you got to give credit to Oklahoma for making it this far. But I would have liked to see, you know, what Oregon could do there. I know that's an interesting point you made there about Jalen Hurts, Alan. But Pam, I got to ask you. I mean, we'll be making predictions about this, but yeah, does LSU versus Oklahoma excite you at all?
I'm not an Oklahoma fan. It excites me because I get to watch Coach O and the LSU offense again. But no, the matchup I'm looking forward to is Ohio State and Clemson. I'm just really glad that LSU and Clemson aren't playing in that first round.
Yeah.
Both teams are deserving to be in the championship, and I just didn't want to see Ohio State as the 1 seed. They didn't deserve that.
Yeah,
and so I am excited about these matchups because I am convinced that LSU and Clemson are the 2 best teams in the country, and this matchup gives us the opportunity to see that.
This is really exciting. I'm telling you, I'm so hyped for both these games and for the championship. LSU going out there and waffle stomping Georgia, unexpected, but oh my goodness, is that a team with all the swag that you could possibly have. I've never seen a team beat this many good, supposedly at least good teams. And I will say not supposedly. They have beaten legitimately good teams all season long, and now they're here, and they still have to being asked to do more. Beat Oklahoma, beat Jalen Hurts, a player you've never beaten, Coach O, and then go and beat Ohio State or Clemson, and that could go down as one of the all-time, at least before kickoff games in terms of semifinals. It's amazing. It's amazing. I love it all, and I cannot wait. And in terms of the other bowl games, there's a bowl game called the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, Pam. It's Florida State and Arizona State. The matchup stinks, but it's called the Tony the Tiger Bowl. I think that's also amazing and going to be the game I'm marking my calendar for now on New Year's Eve.
I was hoping Pitt would be in the Cheez-It Bowl. As a big fan of Cheez-Its myself, that's the bowl game that I think it's the best name.
Really? You like that better than the Bad Boy Mowers Gasparilla Bowl?
I mean, we could keep talking about all the names here.
Bad Boy Mowers.
What about I like the Walk-Ons Independence Bowl. That's a big Louisiana bar.
I thought you were going to talk about the Waffle Stomping Bowl.
The Waffle Stomping Bowl is hopefully what Pitt's going to be playing in against Eastern Michigan. Yeah, the 4, I think we could all agree there's not too much complaining you could do. Obviously, if Alabama was the 4th team in there, we would all be picking them to win it all anyway, right?
No.
There would have been, I'll put it this way. I probably would have picked them to beat LSU, I would have said.
Beating Alabama twice in 1 year, yeah. You beat them once, do it again. I'm glad they're not asking LSU to do that. That would have been unfair. And last thing here we got, Vince. Army, Navy, go Army. Beat Navy.
I think we'll end the show here saying go Navy, beat Army.
Yeah, that's I've heard you say it the other way around all of our lives pretty much, but I'm officially now a West Pointer. You've got an XFL team. An XFL team has now taken that facility over for part of their mini camp, so I have a connection there as a big XFL hunk. And then for the New York Guardians, go Guardians on duty. And then also I've hiked across the river from West Point, so there's my connection to them. I'm rooting for Army in this one. Sorry.
Well, that's fine. I'm cheering for the Naval Academy, like I always do. Naval Academy, a 10-point favorite right now at the Westgate. We're not going to make a pick on this game. It just wouldn't be right.
No.
But I don't know who you're cheering for, Pam. Probably just a good game and for nobody to get hurt.
That's right. Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt, everybody. Keep on hailing. We'll see you next week.